evening, everyone. Welcome to today's panel discussion on the impact of carbon, especially fossil fuels, on accelerating climate change and its harmful effects on the environment and human life. My name is Angela Josephine, and I will be moderating this important discussion. Climate change has become one of the most pressing global challenges of our time, with fossil fuel consumption playing a central role in accelerating this crisis. According to research, Africa emits less than 4% of greenhouse gases, yet vulnerable to the impacts of burning fossil fuels, and will suffer the most than other industrialized countries like China, USA, India, and Russia, which emit high metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. On the proponent side, we have Mr. Adur Oliet, a distinguished journalist and environmental advocate with extensive experience in investigative reporting on climate and environmental issues. Mr. Adur will share insights on the media's role in raising awareness about the impacts of fossil fuels. Still on the proponent side, we have our second panelist, Mr. Derbeny Madol, a dedicated environmentalist and climate policy advisor. Mr. Derbeny has been at the forefront of environmental activism and will explain how fossil fuels emissions contribute to climate change and threaten ecosystems. Last, on the proponent side, we have Dr. Ruben Malish, a public health expert specializing in environmental health. Dr. Justin will address the direct and indirect health consequences of climate change, including respiratory illness and heat-related conditions caused by carbon pollution. Crossing to the side of the opponents who are opposing the motion, we have the following panelists. Mr. Adur Oliet, a legal expert specializing in energy and environmental law. Mr. Adur will discuss legal and regulatory perspectives, emphasizing the complexities of balancing environmental concerns with economic growth and legal rights. Secondly, on the opponent side, we have Mr. David Panchol, a CEO of Happy Tires, a leading tire manufacturing company. As a business leader, Mr. Deng will provide insights on the economic implications of reducing fossil fuels dependency and the challenges faced by industries in transitioning to sustainable practices. And our last opponent is Mr. Puorchien, a senior government official responsible for policy development in energy and economic affairs. Mr. Paul will share the government's stance on balancing environmental sustainability with national development goals. We recognize that the issue of carbon emissions and fossil fuels dependency is complex and multifaceted, touching on environmental, economic, legal, health, and policy dimensions. Let's begin by hearing from journalist Adur Oliet about his perspective on the current impact of fossil fuels on climate change and what steps they believe are necessary moving forward. Mr. Adur Oliet, you are welcome.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Adur Oliet. I'm a journalist with a passion for environmental advocate and climate reporting. Over the years, I have covered the intersection of energy policy, environmental justice, and public health, shedding light on how fossil fuel dependence accelerates climate change and its desired consequences on climate and people. As a steam proponent of transitioning to renewable energy and sustainable practices, I aim to amplify the voice of scientists, activists, and affected communities. Tonight, I'm here to contribute to this discussion and emphasize why addressing fossil forest emission is not just environmental imperative, but a moral and social obligation. Thanks for having me. As a journalist advocating for action against fossil fuel use and its impact on climate change, here are my key points. Decade of research by global institute like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change confirmed that burning fossil fuel releases vast amounts of greenhouse gas, methanes, etc. and so on, trapping heat in the atmosphere. This is the primary drivers of global warming and its associated consequences, such as rising temperatures, melting glaciers, and extreme weather patterns. Then number 2 will be environmental degradation. Fossil fuel extraction, coal mining, oil drilling, and fracking devastate ecosystem, causing habitat destruction and loss of biodiversity. Oil spill and coal ashes, contamination ocean, waterways, soil, and marine life with a long-lasting effect, such as areas like Apanai, especially Juba, and Bali, where the oil have been mined, especially Bali. Yeah, most of the companies, they don't use it in a proper way for the health of our people. So, life there, marine life, along with the lasting effects, it's not favored everywhere there. The impacts on human being, air pollution caused by fossil fuel combustion as leading cause of respiratory and cardiovascular disease. The World Health Organization predicts millions of premature deaths annually in such pollution, especially when we go to college. Kids nowadays are given birth premature due to the effects of oils in that areas. And my third point, accelerating climate disasters, burning fossil fuels, intensify natural disasters. Hurricanes, floods, and wildfire are becoming more frequent and severe, directly linked to rising global temperatures. These disasters displace millions, create food and water shortages, and exploit global inadequacy. My fifth point, that's economic cost. The long-term cost of climate change disasters cover healthcare and adaptation infrastructure for outweigh the short-term profiles of fossil fuel industry. Transitioning to renewable energy reduce and strengthen economic beyond the same ecological costs.
Thank you, Mr. Adur, for your wonderful presentation on impacts of fossil fuels and transitioning to renewable energy like solar. And before we proceed to the next panelist, I have a question to you, Mr. Adur. As a staunch proponent of transitioning to renewable energy and sustainable practices, how do you amplify voices of those affected by the impact of burning fossil fuels?
So, according to the question you asked, through participation in companies, cut of financial support for fossil fuels. Another one is holding government accountability for their support of fossil fuel. I think I'm giving you an answer.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adur. I would like to pass it on to the other panelists if at all they would like to probe. Oh, yes, Mr. David Pancho, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, moderator, for giving me this chance to ask my colleague the question. And my question to you, Adur, is something that is very simple and it's something that I have been doing. So I want to know from you, what is the role of media in creating or carrying out awareness on the impact of burning fossil fuels?
Thank you. Thanks. The question is very nice. Yeah, the role of media is to provide information about the energy, technologies, and healthy effects of air pollution.
Now let's cross to the opponent side and we will start with Mr. Adur Oliet, a legal practitioner. Mr. Oliet, what is your stand on the motion?
Good evening, dear esteemed panelists, moderator, and the audience. My name is Ruben. However, as an opponent, I will differ from my friend who was the first speaker from the proponent side. And the reason why I differ with you is discussed down below with my points. Firstly, the role of carbon in economic development. In 1997, there was a protocol that was formed in a place called Kyoto. The protocol is known as Kyoto Protocol 1997. This protocol recognized the principle of carbon but differentiated responsibilities, allowing developing countries to practice economic growth while managing emissions. It underscores the need for a balanced approach where development is not sacrificed in pursuit of emissions reduction. What it means is that we should not sacrifice our development or developmental activities and technological advancement in pursuit of reduction of emissions. So the second point is on climate change. It states that climate change is a complex phenomenon, and the legal evidence is United Nations framework. Secondly, climate change is a complex phenomenon, and the legal evidence is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Article 1, which emphasizes that climate change includes both natural and human-induced factors, e.g. deforestation. This acknowledges that fossil fuels are not the sole contributor and places importance on a broader understanding of climate change dynamics. Thirdly, advancement in carbon capture and storage, known as CCS. The legal evidence is the Paris Agreement that was held in Paris 2015. Article number 10 of that agreement states that technology is to be used to combat climate change. This includes carbon capture and storage, which has been supported by various national and international frameworks. The US Clean Air Act also has some provisions that allow industries to implement carbon capture and storage technologies to meet emissions standards, showing that the law provides mechanisms to balance fossil fuel use and environmental protection. Last but not least, misattribution of environmental degradation. As you all know, environmental degradation is the destruction of the environment. Convention on Biological Diversity, that was an agreement held in 1992. This treaty highlights the threats like habitats destruction and deforestation, which are independent of fossil fuel use but significantly contributes to environmental degradation. The United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, also a convention held in 1994. This focuses on land degradation and deforestation as key environmental threats, showing that environmental harm extends beyond carbon emissions. So it is not only fossil fuels, but land desertification, deforestation, and habitat threats that also leads to carbon emissions. However, my last point, which is the fifth, is human adaptability and resilience. European Green Deal, also a treaty held in 2020 recently. This deal seeks to phase out fossil fuels, and it also emphasizes adaptability through renewable energy innovation, demonstrating that fossil fuels can coexist with environmental strategies during a transitional period. So my stand as an opponent of this is that fossil fuels are not a long-term strategy for our development. We shall also transit to a much more greener energy in the future. But before we go there, we need not to rush, because we need technological advancements, which is being brought by fossil fuels. So, to conclude, I agree that we must tackle climate change urgently, and I strongly believe that demonizing fossil fuels as the sole accelerant is counterproductive.
Thank you for that impressive presentation. I would like to ask you, how does technological innovations mitigate the impact of burning fossil fuels in our communities?
Well, to answer your question, climate change is a vast topic to deal with. And the question you asked me, I will handle it in a much more broader perspective. As we speak right now, we are in Africa, which is known as the global south. We emit less carbon emissions compared to the Western world, Western countries. So, and recently, there was a summit held by the Western world together with the global south and the other poor countries in other parts of the world to compensate for the destruction of the ozone layer and the environment by fossil fuels emissions and other environmental activities that destroy the earth. So, to answer your question, I would say there is an already ongoing compensation of the countries that are mostly affected by the climate change, especially in the global south. So just be patient, everything will be handled as we transit to a much greener energy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adur. From here, we cross back to the proponent side, and I will start with Mr. Madol. As an environmentalist, what do you say about the motion?
Good evening, my name is Derbeny, and I am an environmentalist, advocate, and researcher. It's an honor to participate in today's discussion on the critical topic of the impact of carbon emissions, especially those from fossil fuel, on accelerating climate change and its devastating effect on our environment and human lives. First and foremost, I strongly agree with the motion that fossil fuel use is a major contributor to climate change with severe and wide-ranging consequences. This assertion is backed by decades of scientific evidence. First, carbon emission and climate change. The combustion of fossil fuel, coal, oil, and natural gas releases billions of tons of carbon dioxide annually. This greenhouse gas trap heat in our atmosphere, leading to global warming, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. Fossil fuel account for over 75% of global greenhouse gas emission, and nearly 90% of the carbon dioxide emission. The more we burn fossil fuel, the more we destabilize our climate systems. Second, environmental consequences. If we talk about environmental consequences, the environmental impact of this are catastrophic. Melting ice cap and rising sea levels will threaten coastal communities and ecosystems. Extreme weather events, hurricanes, floods, droughts, and wildfires are becoming more frequent and intense. Biodiversity lost. The species unable to adapt rapid changes in their habitat facing extinction, further stabilizing. Third is harm to human life. Climate change is not just an environmental issue. It is a human one. This disproportionately affect vulnerable population, like the communities that are living in impoverished life. Health risk. Increased air pollution lead to respiratory diseases, rising temperatures, exacerbate heat-related illness, and vector-borne diseases like malaria. Food and water security. Crop failure and water shortage are already evidence in many parts of the world. Economic cost. The damage from climate-related disasters strain global economies, particularly in low-income regions. In conclusion, the time to act is now. Transitioning away from fossil fuel to renewable energy source is not just a necessity, but a moral imperative. This is not just merely about mitigating climate change. It is about protecting the only home we have and ensure a livelihood future for the generation to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Derbeny. Drawing from your conclusion, you say this is not merely about mitigating climate change, it's about protecting the only home we have and ensuring a livable future for our generations to come. What measures should we put in place to ensure a livable future for our generations to come?
The measures that should be taken are as follows. First, we need to transition away from fossil fuel to green light energy. Second is giving policies. The government should give policies that should regulate our environment. For instance, an example is that if one individual country, there should be a reserve.
Thank you so much, Mr. Derbeny Madol, for your wonderful presentation. Now, let's cross to the opposition side, and we have the CEO of Happy Tires manufacturing company, Mr. David Puorchien. What is your take on the motion?
Thank you, moderator, and good evening, my fellow panelists. I am David Puorchien, the CEO of Happy Tire, a global leader in manufacturing, in tire manufacturing. My industry has long been associated with the use of fossil fuels, both directly and indirectly, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this critical discussion on climate change. However, I am here today to challenge the motion that fossil fuels are the primary culprit behind climate change, and to offer a broader and more balanced perspective. I am against the motion that fossil fuels are the primary culprit of climate change because of my following arguments. One, the role of fossil fuel in development. We must all acknowledge the fact that fossil fuels have played a greater role in economic development. That includes providing employment to thousands or millions of people around the globe. For instance, my company has employed many people, which has really brought them out of poverty. They are in position to support their own families. They are also in position to also work on their dream. Like if you're a young youth and you happen to work in a fossil fuel company or has my own fossil fuel company. And also, this has also supported the infrastructure. For example, the burning of fossil fuel has supported the construction of the roads and other infrastructures like buildings. Like my second point is carbon emission has a shared responsibility. While it is undeniable that carbon emissions contribute to climate change, attributing problems solely to fossil fuel oversimplifies the issue. That is to say, fossil fuel are not the sole cause of the emission of carbon gases, because there are other human activities that intensify the emission of carbon gases into the atmosphere, like agriculture. We are all aware that in agriculture, there are some fertilizers, when they are applied to the soil, they produce some gases like nitrogen, which increases or which act as a contributor to climate change. Another issue is deforestation on large scale. So if we cut down trees on large scale, of course, we will not be in position to receive rain in such areas, because we are all aware that the presence of trees supports the formation of the conventional rainfall. So we cannot solely blame the burning of fossil fuel as the primary contributor. So we first need to address these issues. How do we address these issues is the main issue that we should discuss, rather than blaming fossil fuel on, rather than blaming the burning of fossil fuel as the primary contributor to climate change. My third point is on the practicality of transition. A rapid and complete shift away from fossil fuel is not only impractical, but could also have unintended consequences. Many renewable technologies rely on resources like rare earth metals, which come with their environmental and ethical challenges. The transition must be gradual, balanced, and considerate of global needs. So we do acknowledge that fossil fuel do contribute in climate change. But we cannot transition just at once like that. It has to take a process. It has to be gradual. If we are going to transition, what laws should be put in place in order to first control other primary contributors like agriculture, deforestation? If we solve these issues, then we are in position now to accept that yes, we are going to transition after knowing that other primary contributors have been stopped. Because if we stop the burning of fossil fuel and we still have agriculture being practiced in a way that supports the emission of these carbon gases, then it's like as if we are solving one issue and we have another issue that has not already been solved. My fifth point is about the challenges that the manufacturing companies are likely to face when they are transitioning to renewable energy. We are all aware that solar power is very expensive when you're purchasing the batteries, the panels. So we cannot accept the transition right now, because we first need the prices of the solar to first be reduced so that we are in position to afford the solar. Second to that, we are all aware that when we want to have enough power, solar power that can support manufacturing companies, it needs large space. And now where can we get space when some companies already have smaller space where they can put their solar panels? For instance, now if you have a smaller room as a manufacturing company, can it really accommodate all the solar panels that are going to provide the power? The third point on this is about the unpredictability of the weather. We are already aware that climate change is already happening. So from now and then, it might be raining or shining. So how will it be for the companies that are in places that experience cold weather or places that do not experience sunshine on a daily basis? Which means their production in 9 hours their production in 9 hours will be affected because they will not have enough power. Their operation during the night hours will be affected. So transitioning to this clean energy like solar will not be easy because of such challenges that the manufacturing companies are likely to face. My fifth point is on adaptation and mitigation. We are already aware that climate change is a phenomenon that is here to stay. We are already experiencing it, and therefore it will be really too hard to mitigate it. It will really be too hard to get rid of it. So one thing that we should all focus on is how we can live with it. If we are to live with it, what policies should the government put in place, or what warning mechanisms should the government put in place in order to let people know if the climate change, like flood is happening in a certain area? The government should put in early warning mechanism where people will be informed that at this certain period of time, we are likely to experience floods, which means people should be evacuated to a much safer environment. In my conclusion, while climate change is a pressing issue, blaming fossil fuels is not the answer. The focus should be on innovation, collaboration, and balanced solutions that consider both environmental and economic realities. Here I mean that however much we might want to get rid of the burning of fossil fuel, we should also consider the economic impact that we are likely to face. Which means if we, as manufacturing companies and all the stakeholders, we should focus on adaptation and mitigation mechanism. In conclusion, while climate change is a pressing issue, blaming fossil fuels is not the answer. The focus should be on innovation, collaboration, and balanced solutions that consider both environmental and economic realities. And as a responsible leader in entire industry, I am committed to driving sustainability forward. But I firmly believe we must approach this issue pragmatically and not ideologically. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Derbeny Panchol. Taking from your presentation and conclusion, how can this issue be approached pragmatically and not ideologically?
What I mean by the statement is that we should give practical solutions to the already existing problems that we have. And one of the practical solutions is that we can use both the renewable energy and fossil fuel interchangeably. What I mean is that we should work on the weather. So if it is during the dry season, the manufacturing companies should transition to using solar power, because there will be enough sunshine that will be trapped by solar panels, and the batteries will have the power to support the manufacturing industries. Now, when it comes to the duration where now the weather is, where we are in rainy season, then we can now transition back to using the fossil fuel, which means the emission will be reduced. Another practical aspect of this is the government should put laws in place that should guide the cutting down of trees. If you are a businessman and you are practicing, if you are a businessman and you are dealing with the selling of timber, it means if you cut one tree, you should plant the other. Second with that, the government should also put in place laws that restrict people from cutting down trees and burning them for charcoal. Because we are already aware that the smoke that goes to the atmosphere interferes with.
Thank you so much, Mr. Derbeny Panchol. Switching to the proponent side, we will hear from Dr. Justin on his perspective on Malish. Dr. Justin, you are welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Moderator. My name is Dr. Justin Ruben, and I'm a medical doctor specializing in public health and environmental health. My professional focus has been on understanding how environmental factors such as air pollution and climate change impact human health and well-being. I'm here today to support the motion that the use of fossil fuels and the associated carbon emission are attributing climate change and causing significant harm to both the environment and human life. As a doctor, I see the direct and indirect impacts of fossil fuel emission on human health every day. Burning fossil fuel release harmful pollutants like carbon dioxide, methane, and particulate matter into atmosphere. These pollutants contribute to global warming and have a cascade of harmful effects on human health. My points are as follows. 1. Respiratory and heart diseases. The release of PM 2.5 and other pollutants from fossil fuel combustion leads to an increase in respiratory conditions like asthma, COPD, and even lung cancer. It also increases disease risk of heart attack and stroke. 2. Heat-related illness. Climate change driven by carbon emission is causing rising global temperatures. This results in more frequent and severe heat waves, which are linked to heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and dehydration, especially in vulnerable populations like the elderly, children, and individuals with pre-existing health conditions. Let's take a look at 2024, early 2024, whereby the Ministry of Education and together with the Ministry of Health shut down the school due to heat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Justin Ruben Malish, for your impressive presentation. Now, Doctor, how do you handle patients that are affected by heat wave?
The measures that they should take is they should stop working under the hot sun, and 2, they should drink enough water. Thank you, Ms. Moderator.
After listening to our last panelist on the proponent side, we will now switch to our last panelist on the opponent side, and it's none other than Mr. Puorchien, who is a government official. Mr. Puorchien, what is your argument on the motion?
Good evening, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Puorchien. I serve as a Director of Strategic Planning and Policy Making in South Sudan Ministry of Petroleum. I appreciate this opportunity to participate in today's discussion on the impact of carbon, particularly diesel fuel, on climate change and its alleged detrimental effects on the environment and human life. While I respect the urgency of addressing climate change, I fundamentally disagree with the motion. I believe the demonization of diesel fuel as the primary accelerant of climate change is oversimplified and counterproductive. Instead, I hate that diesel fuel have been an indispensable driver of global development, poverty alleviation, and improved quality of life, and the transitioning away from them must be carefully balanced to avoid unintended consequences. Therefore, as I disagree with the motion, I therefore raise a point based on my arguments. The following are my point: fossil fuel and human progress. As you know, fossil fuel has played a great role. Fossil fuel have been the backbone of global economic growth for over a century. They power industries, transport goods, and support modern healthcare, agriculture, education. Without billions of people in developing countries would not have access to reliable energy, which is crucial for economic and social progress. Forcing a rapid transition from fossil fuel could trap millions in energy poverty. The point of argument number 2 is unrealistic transition timeline. What do I mean about it? The timeline for transitioning from carbon-based energy to renewable energy source is not actually put on time. A renewable energy source while promising, are not yet full, reliable, or scalable to meet global energy demand. For example, wind and solar are intermittent and depend on weather conditions. Till storage technology improve fossil fuel remain necessary component of global energy mix to ensure stability and affordability. The argument number 3 is climate solution beyond fossil fuel reduction. There are alternatives that are to be taken before we say we want to we want to make transition from carbon-based energy to clean energy. There are some alternatives that need to be observed before we take that option. Number 4, we talk about economic and social costs. Are rapidly facing our fossil fuel risk that besetting economies that depend heavily on oil, coal, and gas. Millions of jobs in energy sector and related industry could be lost, leading to social unrest and exacerbating inequality. Policy makers must prioritize just transition that account for the livelihood of affected community. The economics and social costs are different. One of the things that we should look for instance, the carbon-based sources of energy, like oil, drive the development and technology forward, and therefore closing them down could create a job gap for those who are working on that sector, and also for other activities that they do. The number 4 or the number 5 for which I will focus on it is political and economy of carbon-based energy. What do I mean by political and economic of carbon-based energy is that most of the countries that have reserve in oil, in petroleum sector, are now influencing the other countries that are in high demand of petroleum, and therefore shipping away from petroleum or from carbon-based energy such as petroleum and coal could even give a political gap, because there is high demand in other perspective, whereby a country with national resources like oil is influencing other countries that doesn't have, and therefore we see this transition as not necessary, because those with oil reserve will dispute it. In context of South Sudan, where 98% of incomes are generated from oil revenue, and the fiscal year budgets of every year, oil has a lot of income to contribute toward fiscal year budget, and therefore we as a developed country will not be able to accept transition as early as today. For there are some things that need to be addressed before we step forward for transition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Puorchien. What are your closing thoughts?
My closing thought is that while I agree that climate change is a present global issue, it is essential to approach it with pragmatism and inclusivity. Fossil fuels have played a pivotal role in building the world as we know it today, and their role cannot be dismissed without considering the broader implication. Let us strive for solutions that balance environmental stewardship with economic stability and human being and human developments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Puorchien, for your impressive elaboration on your arguments. As a government official that opposes the motion on abandoning fossil fuels to renewable energy sources, how do you protect the environment and human lives from the impacts of carbon-based energy as a government official?
Thank you, moderator, for asking me that nice question. You see, the situation here is that the government is actually care of the environmental, conducive environment for the people to live in. And therefore, we as a government is trying our best to regulate the companies and make sure that we restrict them to abide by the law and follow the law that are actually in place. We will work together with the companies operating with those doing the activities like carbon-based energy to make sure that the human life and the organism, animals, plants are very important, and therefore they need to take care of it. When you look critically at the angle of this transitioning away from carbon-based energy to green energy, sometimes as politicians we have different angles to which we actually put our analysis forward and take observation on it. You see, there are countries in the world, geopolitically, there are countries in the world that are rich in natural resources like oil, petroleum, while there are other countries that are having no petroleum at all. And therefore, we see this transitioning from carbon-based energy to green energy is left at the back for those who have petroleum, and those who don't have petroleum are countering on the countries that have petroleum. Meanwhile, there are countries that have a lot of reserves, and that reserves make them very important and have a significant position in the global politics.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paul. As we draw closer to the end of this panel discussion on banning of fossil fuels, being the primary contributor to climate change and transitioning to renewable energy, let's hear final remarks from our panelists. And I will start with the opponents and then to the proponents. Dear panelists, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you once again, moderator, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. My last remark is fossil fuels are not the sole contributor to climate change patterns. There are some other factors that collaborate to change climate patterns. So what we need to do is to collaborate and see ways of adaptation and resilience as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adur Oliet. To the proponents, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moderator. We appreciate you for hosting us. I guess next time you can bring us together and discuss this, because this is creative. Thank you.
Thank you to all our panelists for sharing their valuable insights and perspectives, and to our audience for being part of this important conversation. Today, we've had a variety of viewpoints on the impact of fossil fuels on climate change, the environment, and human health. While opinions may differ on the path forward, one thing is clear: the challenges posed by climate change demand urgent and collaborative action. As we move forward, it's crucial to strike a balance between economic growth and environmental sustainability. It is crucial to strike a balance between economic growth and environmental sustainability and the well-being of our communities. Therefore, the solutions to these complex problems will require innovation, open dialogue, and cooperation across sectors, including policymakers, businesses, scientists, and citizens. Therefore, I encourage everyone here to reflect on today's discussion and consider what role you can play, whether in your personal, professional, or community life, to contribute to a more sustainable future. Thank you once again for joining us. Let's continue these conversations and work together to find solutions that benefit both people and the planet. Have a great night.